Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church. So happy that you're joining us for the service for September 20th, 2020. And our guest speaker today is Aly Tharp of the UU Ministry for the Earth. In honor of Aly and the Earth, our opening words and chalice lighting this morning are by an author named Starhawk. And this is actually the opening to a novel that she wrote called The Fifth Sacred Thing. It's called The Declaration of the Four Sacred Things. The earth is a living, conscious being. In company with cultures of many different times and places, we name these things as sacred: air, fire, water, and earth. Whether we see them as the breath, energy, blood, and body of the mother, or as the blessed gifts of a creator, or as symbols of interconnected systems that sustain life, we know that nothing can live without them. To call these things sacred is to say that they have a value beyond their usefulness for human ends, that they themselves become the standard by which our acts, our economics, our laws, and our purposes must be judged. No one has the right to appropriate them or profit from them at the expense of others. Any government that fails to protect them forfeits its legitimacy. All people, all living things are part of the earth life, and so are sacred. No one of us stands higher or lower than any other. Only justice can assure balance. Only ecological balance can sustain freedom. Only in freedom can that fifth sacred thing we call spirit flourish in its full diversity. To honor the sacred is to create conditions in which nourishment, sustenance, habitat, knowledge, freedom, and beauty can thrive. To honor the sacred is to make love possible. To this, we dedicate our curiosity, our will, our courage, our silences, and our voices. To this, we dedicate our lives. And to this, we light our chalice this morning. As Unitarian Universalists, we come together from a variety of backgrounds with many different beliefs. What binds us together is purpose and our shared covenant. Please join me in saying it together. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant: to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
Far beyond the grasp of hands, or light to meet the eye, past the reaches of the mind, there find the key to nature's harmony, in an architecture so entwined. Like the birds whose patterns grace the sky and carry all who join in love expanding, the message of peace will rise in flight, taking the weight of the world upon its wings, in the oneness of everything. Peace is in the dance of trees, who stir before the first breath of wind is yet perceived. Trust in the song becoming one with the dance, and all mysteries can be believed. Songs of lives long past the touch our own are written in the earth ever giving, and now to maintain that we might understand and reduce to terms defined. Vast and immeasurable time and space, also overwhelmingly designed. Oh, passing years, just might I know the faith that winters in the heart to be reborn in spring, to hear and to feel the pulse of life enters my soul as a song to sing of the oneness of everything.
This reading is titled Invocation, and it is written by Poet Laureate and Unitarian Universalist Everett Hoagland. And I'm reading from the book Ghost Fishing, an Eco-Justice Poetry Anthology. Architect of icebergs, snowflakes, crystals, rainbows, sand grains, dust motes, atoms. Mason whose tools are glaciers, rain, rivers, ocean. Chemist who made blood of seawater, bone of minerals in stone, milk of love, whatever you are, I know this. Spinner, you are everywhere, in the all, the ever-changing above, whirling around us. Yes, in the loose strands, in the rough weave of the common cloth threaded with our DNA on the hubbed, spoked, spinning wheel that is this world, solar system, galaxy, universe. Help us to see ourselves in all creation and all creation in ourselves, ourselves in one another. Remind those of us who like connections made with similes, metaphors, symbols. All of us are, everything is already connected. Remind us, as the oceans go, so go we. As the air goes, so go we. As other life forms on Earth go, so go we. As our planet goes, so go we. Great poet who inspired in the beginning was the word. Edit our thoughts so our ethics are our politics and our actions the afterlives of our words.
Community UU Church is an ecosystem too, and it relies on new inputs of ideas and money in order to create community and resources like this worship service. We rely not only on pledges, but also on impromptu gifts from visitors and members to help support our work. Now, we don't have an usher coming to your house today to pass an offering plate, but luckily you don't need one. You can go to communityuuchurch.org or click the link in the text below to make your gift. Thank you very much for your support.
Our next speaker was selected from more than 500 candidates to represent the voice of civil society. From the Marshall Islands, please welcome Kathy Jetnil Kijiner.
Yahweh Komolib, I would like to share with you a poem that I have written for my daughter, Matefele Benam. Dear Matefele Benam, you are a 7-month-old sunrise of gummy smiles. You are bald as an egg and bald as the Buddha. Your thighs that are thunder, shrieks that are lightning, so excited for bananas, hugs, and our morning walks along the lagoon. Dear Matefele Benam, I want to tell you about that lagoon, that lucid, sleepy lagoon lounging against the sunrise. Men say that one day That lagoon will devour you. They say it will gnaw at the shoreline, chew at the roots of your breadfruit trees, gulp down rows of your seawalls, and crunch through your island's shattered bones. They say you, your daughter, and your granddaughter too, will wander rootless, with only a passport to call home. Dear Mata Filipinum, don't cry. Mommy promises you, no one will come and devour you. No greedy whale of a company sharking through political seas, no backwater bullying of businesses with broken morals, no blindfolded bureaucracies gonna push this mother ocean over the edge. No one's drowning, baby. No one's moving. No one's losing their homeland. No one's gonna become a climate change refugee. Or should I say, no one else. To the Carteret Islanders of Papua New Guinea and to the Taro Islanders of Fiji, I take this moment to apologize to you. We are drawing the line here. Because baby, we are going to fight. Your mommy, daddy, boo-boo, dimma, your country, and your president too, we will all fight. And even though there are those hidden behind platinum titles who like to pretend that we don't exist, that the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Maldives, and Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, and floods of Pakistan, Algeria, and Colombia, and hurricanes, tidal waves, and earthquakes didn't exist, still, there are those who see us, hands reaching out, fists raising up, banners unfurling, megaphones booming, and we are canoes blocking coal ships. We are the radiance of solar villages. We are the rich, clean soil of the farmer's past. We are petitions blooming from teenage fingertips. We are families biking, recycling, reusing, engineers dreaming, designing, building, artists painting, dancing, writing. We are spreading the word. And there are thousands out on the street, marching with signs, hand in hand, chanting for change now. They're marching for you, baby. They're marching for us. Because we deserve to do more than just survive. We deserve to thrive. Dear Mata Filipinum, you are eyes heavy with drowsy weight. So just close those eyes, baby, and sleep in peace. Because we won't let you down. You'll see.
In September of 2014, 6 years ago, I was in New York City for what was at the time the world's biggest climate mobilization ever, with 311,000 people. I was one among an entire city block of Unitarian Universalists and people of faith and conscience, all of us unwittingly engaged in a 3-hour embodied practice of sardines in a can. 3 hours, waiting packed so tight we could barely move as other sections of the march filed out ahead of ours into this enormous parade. The biggest protest or march I had ever been to before that was maybe 200 people. I was just astounded at how many of us there were. The 2014 People's Climate March was the first event that I had ever been to in an official capacity with the Unitarian Universalist Ministry for Earth. I had just been hired as the coordinator for the UU Young Adults for Climate Justice Network. This march also marked the launch of the Commit to Respond campaign, our first Unitarian Universalist climate justice initiative across the faith. And it coincided with an important climate convergence at the United Nations. This was a momentous time. Out of all of my memories from that time in New York City, none of them compared to the experience of participating in Flood Wall Street demonstrations the day after the march. We gathered in Battery Park at the southern tip of Manhattan Island, and after listening to a few speakers, Lisa Fithian, a renowned organizer and trainer, prepared the crowd for what we were about to do. Be like water, she said. Don't be rigid at all. Flow with and around each other's, take to the streets, and keep moving to take up as much of Wall Street as we possibly can. Lisa prepared us to listen for a signal, at which point everyone would sit or lay down in the street wherever we were, and all together tap our hands on our heart at the same time, in the rhythm of a heartbeat. As we practiced making a collective heartbeat for the first time in Battery Park, chills swept over me, and I was deeply moved by the energy of this crowd. This feeling of exuberance kept growing as we moved out of the park and into the streets, and it brimmed to overflowing as I folded in behind a marching band and dancers on stilts wearing elaborate blue costumes. We danced, we flowed, we unfurled this massive, massive banner. And it soon became clear that the New York Police Department's primary and perhaps only concern with our presence was that we did not get onto Wall Street. They set up barricades to the side streets that the crowds were not able to surpass, and so we settled for occupying Broadway instead. No arrests were made for hours and hours and hours. At one point, an organizer walked by announcing, "Hang tight, we just ordered 100 pizzas." And in that moment, Flood Wall Street became an emergent, inspired, unpermitted block party. We ended up circling into groups to share stories and discuss strategies for the growing climate movement. As sunset approached that evening, the police started ordering the crowds to leave the streets. Most people, including myself, complied, but my friends Murtaza and Caroline, who is a fellow UU young adult and a former intern of our UU office at the United Nations, were among the 40 or so people who did not comply, who stayed in the streets and were arrested. I spent that night excitedly sharing my stories and my photos from the day with other friends, and thinking in the quiet moments about Murtaza and Caroline and the other people in jail that night. It would take me 4.5 years more to develop the courage that they displayed that day. Flood Wall Street was the first time that I had ever intentionally tried to move like water, with great ease and opportunity, filling in whatever space is available. It was a profound contrast to the feeling of the 3-hour embodied sardine can practice the day before. What if we had all been dancing and moving and playing and praying spaciously throughout Central Park and the upper streets of Manhattan while we had waited our turn to join the climate march? I thought, what would happen if we adopted move like water as an organizational principle, as a principle we can live by? In their awesome ode to Bruce Lee titled "The Waves We Give," the group Beautiful Chorus sings, "When nothing within us stays rigid, we decide, we design the shape we are in and the waves we give. We can flow or we can crash." I love that so much. What it says to me is that true strength lies not in the crash, but in the ability to flow. Furthermore, the ability to flow begets and sustains our ability to crash, and to crash like water, which is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, that's exactly what we were trying to do on Wall Street in 2014. Typically, a crash is bad when it involves things that stay rigid, because rigid things break. Now, I had never tried to move like water before Flood Wall Street, but I had tried to move like a jellyfish before many times, beginning at the Southwest UU Summer Institute, or SWUSI, of 2009, when I volunteered to lead the early morning water aerobics class, with no experience, I might add, in order just to reduce my registration expenses. Let me tell you, the jellyfish is a great move. And in the field of casual water aerobics, I might have invented it that summer. It goes like this. Simply lean back, Feel free to use a pool noodle. Move your limbs simultaneously in a slow wave motion in front of you. All your limbs, your feet too, with as much ease and blissful chill as absolutely possible. You can slowly glide backwards throughout the pool, adjusting your speed and direction to suit the circumstances. That, my friends, is the jellyfish. I come back to this move whenever I jump into a lake or body of spring water for fun, because it helps me reconnect to my playful spirit and my sense of wonder about the small beauties of life, like the feeling of cool water moving through your fingers and the ways that sunlight can light up the water the most brilliant cyan blue. Jellyfish are something I don't ever actually want to swim with, but I do have a great appreciation for them. In college, I actually even considered becoming a marine biologist specializing in jellyfish, or their whole branch in the family tree of the animal kingdom, the cnidarians, which also include coral reefs and sea anemones. I love jellyfish for their strong defense game, their innate capacity to mesmerize me with their strange beauty, and again, absurd amount of ease and blissful chill in the way that they move about their day. They are adaptable like water itself. So much can be learned from cnidarians. What would it look like? What would happen if we moved with the ease and the patient optimism of a jellyfish in our work to protect our communities and advance justice in this world? While there are many lessons in ease and adaptation to be learned from the jellyfish, I actually find that their cousin, the coral, provides a more apt model for us to look to when it comes to community and movement building. Now, what I love about corals is that they look like technicolor plants and brains when they are really more like high-rise apartments and neighborhoods for thousands of tiny little animals called polyps that subsist on the energy of even tinier photosynthetic algae living in their cell tissues. This microscopic neighborhood is a fractal and a cornerstone for the most biodiverse neighborhood in the natural world, the coral reef ecosystem. It is amazing. Corals are what really got me thinking seriously about climate change and symbiosis. Symbiosis, according to Wikipedia, is any type of close and long-term interaction between two different biological organisms. And there are three kinds of symbiosis observed in the natural world: mutualistic, commensalistic, and parasitic symbiosis. Coral reefs are an example of mutualistic symbiosis because the polyp animals provide a home for the algae and the algae provide nutrients for the polyps. Commensalistic symbiosis is like a barnacle catching a joyride on a whale. The barnacle benefits greatly and the whale is not really affected. And parasitic symbiosis is like a virus. It uses our cells in order to replicate and we are hurt in the process. I believe that our Unitarian Universalist principles are suggesting that we strive for mutualistic symbiosis as biological beings, or at the very least, commensalistic symbiosis in all our relationships with people, with places, and with all other species. The worldviews and practices of inequity and domination are often justified by reference to the evolutionary theory of survival of the fittest through cutthroat competition in what is assumed to be a zero-sum game. This is perhaps the most prevalent message that dominant capitalist society has latched onto and integrated into social psychology as a lesson from nature. But there are so many other lessons from nature besides competition is good and you have to compete to survive. Now, in looking at the amazing ecology of coral reefs, you might wonder, How often are the mutualists the fittest to survive? To what degree is working out copacetic arrangements with your neighbors where everybody wins a key to surviving and thriving? Given that mutualism is the cornerstone for this most biodiverse ecosystem on the planet, this relational principle we can witness in nature is sorely underestimated, ignored, and taken for granted. But perhaps you're sitting here thinking, the coral reefs are dying, not thriving. How could she even suggest corals as a model for surviving right now? And that's a valid question. It is true that the times are tough for the corals and they are likely to go extinct within this century or the next at current rates. And in no way am I trying to suggest that it's okay that the corals are collapsing right now. It is not okay. But coral reefs have gone extinct before, during multiple previous biological eras of climate change and mass extinction on this planet. They have disappeared completely from the fossil records for millions of years and slowly re-evolved when the conditions were right again. I don't know any other species on Earth that has accomplished that. And as we enter into this era of climate change and ecological collapse, we should look to the corals and we should protect them. So I have concluded that symbiotic mutualism, this force that can re-evolve through a mass extinction, is a very powerful and resilient and fundamental modality and force of nature. Cooperation and reciprocity are just as central to the web of life as competition, if not more so. Now, there's an increasingly common message circulating these days. Perhaps you've heard this or even said it yourself, that humanity is like a virus or a parasite on the planet due to our triggering of climate change and ecological destruction. My concern with this is firstly that likening human beings to parasites comes right out of the propaganda playbook for justifying genocide and systemic racism. The people most harmed by these arguments are women of color who have been sterilized against their will for over a century in this country, and who are being sterilized against their will in prisons and ICE detention facilities to this day. Ecofascism is a real phenomenon and it is flaring up all over the world. Right here in North Texas, special interest groups are arguing that ending immigration into the United States is an environmental protection strategy. Local activists had to raise a ruckus to prevent this group from tabling at Earth Day Texas events in Fair Park, a stone's throw away only a few years ago. I hope that we can agree that broadly likening humanity to parasitic mutualism adds fuel to these heinous acts and worldviews for anyone hearing them through the biased lens of white supremacy. This argument lacks essential nuance. Although I find it indisputable that humanity has benefited greatly through acts that cause harm to other organisms and ecosystems, which is something likenable to parasitic mutualism, or parasitic symbiosis, excuse me, this is generally unique. This is unique to colonial, to imperialist, to extractivist cultures, and not to humanity innately. It is a grave and in itself genocidal mistake to conflate colonial and extractive modalities with human nature, because it ignores and erases other long-standing cultures and ways of being in harmony, in reciprocity, in mutuality. The extractive and destructive human behaviors causing climate change are not representative of all of humanity or of human nature innately. These harms are caused by a human culture among many, and we have a choice to end them, to end this culture. Grandmother Casey Camp Hornick is a leader of the Ponca Nation Women's Scout Dance Society and an organizer for climate justice and the rights of nature. I have been blessed to know and to work with Casey in my role with UU Ministry for Earth through our partnership with the documentary film, The Condor and the Eagle. In this film, there is a clip from when Casey Camp Hornick spoke at the United Nations Church Center in New York City around the same time as the People's Climate March in 2014. After explaining how the extractive fossil fuel industries are poisoning her community, Casey says this: "My people have survived all of these generations, and we are going to survive into the next one. We're going to survive, and we are going to survive, and we're going to survive. We ask you to simply want to survive with us, and in doing so, you need to support us." This message that for humanity to collectively survive this dawning era of climate chaos and ecological collapse involves supporting Indigenous and Native peoples and environmental justice communities in their struggles to survive is hard for many to understand. It is logic that is based in the power of reciprocity, the power of symbiotic mutualism. This is what we need to learn. The Unitarian Universalist Ministry for Earth's mission is to be, as you use together, a wellspring of bold, accountable, faithful action for environmental justice, climate justice, and the flourishing of life. Imagine this with me. Imagine to be a wellspring, to be this place where water emerges from the earth, cool and fast and fresh, thanks to the reciprocity and the cleansing power of the earth that it moves through. In this metaphor, the water is our bold, accountable, and faithful action. The cleansing filter of the earth is our love. It's our commitment to peace, to justice and equity, to symbiotic mutualism, and the power of community, of doing this together, is the wellspring. The Unitarian Universalist Ministry for Earth is embodied and sustained by choosing to live our faith by transforming our society for the greater good of all through practicing solidarity and relationship with marginalized communities and the entire web of life. UU Ministry for Earth exists so that we may all exist, may thrive, may flourish in a beautiful dance of symbiotic mutualism. Today, I invite you to join and give to this essential ministry in whatever ways you can. Together, we can flow and adapt like water. We can shift between stunning and sliding with ease like the jellyfish. We can unite and build vibrant technicolor communities like the corals. These times, they are daunting and they are depressing, and the path forward is not entirely clear. But we can ensure the survival of life and future generations and our own generation through a deep knowing that we need each other to survive, and that our strength is in our numbers and the power of community. At our best, we humans are nature protecting, celebrating, and defending itself, supporting and reinforcing each other all along the way throughout many cycles of struggle, of survival, of joy, and symbiosis. Blessed be, and may it be so.
I want to say thank you again to Aly Tharp and the UUMFE, the Ministry for Earth, for offering a sermon, a message this morning, but also for the larger work that they do. They say our time to avert climate catastrophe is precious and limited, and Unitarian Universalists have an important role to play in these critical years. It is core to our UU faith identity to be inclusive community centers, catalyzers, and moral voices for justice and positive social change. UUMFE could not do the work that it does today without the support of congregations like Community Church. We, you, make their work possible with our financial contributions. Can you make a gift today to support the work of Aly Tharp and her colleagues and the many UUMFE activists working to save us from ourselves and to protect the most vulnerable people and ecosystems? To donate, click on the link in the About text below this video or go to uumfe.org now to make your donation. Go ahead, pause the video. We'll be here when you get back.
I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
join me as we say together our traditional words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Shalom, blessed be, and amen.